fish, especially, benefited immensely from salting. Vast quantities of herring, cod, and other species were caught, gutted, and then heavily salted and packed into barrels. This salt fish became a staple food across Europe and beyond, allowing populations far from the coast to access a reliable source of protein. Imagine the endless rows of barrels in a merchant's warehouse, each one a portable larder, filled with sustenance that had traveled hundreds, even thousands of miles. Hey guys, tonight we're taking a journey back, way back, to a time before refrigerators hummed in our kitchens, before freezers kept our ice cream perfectly solid, and before vacuum seals promised eternal freshness. We're going to immerse ourselves in the rather ingenious, often brutal, and absolutely essential world of ancient food preservation methods. Imagine, if you will, living in a world where a bountiful harvest could turn to rot in mere days, where a successful hunt could spoil before you even had a chance to eat it all. Your very survival depended on outsmarting nature's relentless march of decay. A little reality check if you were transported back to this era with your current reliance on modern refrigeration. You probably wouldn't last a week before your food went bad. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've explored the sharp, tangy world of pickling, understanding how acidity became a powerful ally against spoilage. Now, let's descend into a different kind of preservation, one that relies not on chemical transformation, but on the earth itself underground storage. In the ancient world, before the advent of electricity or mechanical refrigeration, humanity learned to harness the natural coolness and stability of the ground, turning caves, pits, and specially constructed cellars into nature's own cold storage, a silent, dark guardian of precious harvests. You stand under a scorching sun, the air dry and still. Before you, laid out on large flat rocks or woven mats, are countless slices of meat, strips of fish, and piles of various fruits and vegetables. This isn't a picnic. It's a desperate race against time, a fundamental act of survival. You are witnessing the most ancient and perhaps simplest method of food preservation, drying. It's a battle against moisture, the very element that allows bacteria and mold to flourish, turning your precious food into a putrid mess. Imagine stepping out of the glaring sun and into a cool, damp darkness. The air immediately feels different, carrying the faint, earthy scent of soil and root vegetables. You are entering an ancient cellar, a hand-dug pit, or perhaps even a natural cave, repurposed for the most vital task keeping food fresh. This isn't a high-tech solution, it's an intuitive one, born from observing that things buried or kept in cool, dark places simply last longer. You can almost feel the chill seeping into your bones, a welcome respite from the outside heat, and a powerful ally against decay. The principle is deceptively simple: remove the water, and you remove the lifeblood of spoilage. For millennia, humans have observed that food left in hot, dry conditions shrivels but doesn't rot as quickly. This fundamental observation led to practices that sustained civilizations. Imagine the first time someone noticed that fish left on a sun-baked rock lasted longer than fish kept in a damp cave. That was a game changer, a moment of profound discovery. The fundamental principle behind underground storage is simple temperature stability. Below the surface, the Earth acts as a natural insulator, maintaining a relatively constant, cool temperature year-round, regardless of the scorching summer heat or the biting winter frost above ground. This cool, stable environment significantly slows down the metabolic processes of microorganisms and the enzymatic reactions that lead to spoilage. It's like having a giant, passive refrigerator built right into the landscape. Let's start with meat. After a successful hunt, perhaps a wild boar or a deer, you face an immediate dilemma: how to keep this massive amount of protein from spoiling. You can eat some fresh, of course, but the rest needs to be preserved. You meticulously slice the meat into thin strips, maximizing the surface area. Then, you lay these strips out in the sun, often on elevated racks to allow air circulation and deter pests. The sun's relentless heat and the dry wind work in tandem, slowly drawing out every drop of moisture. You can almost hear the water evaporating, hissing silently into the atmosphere. Let's consider root vegetables first, as they were prime candidates for this method: carrots, parsnips, turnips. Potatoes once introduced to Europe, and beets were often stored in root cellars or buried directly in pits. These pits would be dug deep enough to reach the stable cool temperatures, often lined with straw, sand, or leaves to provide insulation and absorb excess moisture. You meticulously layer carrots in a bed of sand, ensuring they don't touch, knowing that proper spacing prevents rot from spreading. The process is slow, requiring constant vigilance. You must protect the drying meat from insects, birds, and scavenging animals. During the day, you might stand guard, shooing away flies. At night, you bring the meat indoors or cover it, protecting it from dew and nocturnal creatures. This isn't a passive process. It's an active, demanding chore that can take days, sometimes weeks, depending on the climate and the thickness of the meat. The result is jerky, a tough, chewy, but incredibly long-lasting source of protein that can sustain you through lean seasons or long journeys. Grains, the absolute bedrock of ancient diets, were also extensively stored underground. Large, airtight pits, often bell-shaped and lined with clay or plaster, were used to store wheat, barley, and other cereals. The key here was creating an anaerobic, oxygen-free environment. Once sealed, any remaining oxygen in the pit would be quickly consumed by the respiration of the grains themselves and by any microbes present. Without oxygen, insects and most spoilage-causing microorganisms couldn't survive, allowing grains to be stored for years, sometimes even decades. Imagine the sheer volume of grain stored in these subterranean silos, a hidden treasure ensuring a community's survival. Fish, especially in coastal or riverine communities, was also extensively dried. Think of the vast quantities of cod or herring caught in northern waters. These were often split open, gutted, and then hung on wooden racks in the open air, exposed to the cold wind and sun. This method, known as stockfish, created an incredibly durable product that could be stored for years and transported across vast distances. Imagine the sight of entire villages draped in drying fish, the air thick with the smell of salt and sea. It's a powerful, almost primal image of sustenance. Dried fruits and nuts also found a home in underground storage. While they were already preserved by drying, the cool, stable conditions of a cellar further protected them from pests and moisture fluctuations, extending their shelf life even further. You see baskets of dried figs and walnuts, carefully arranged on shelves, their sweetness locked away for future consumption. Fruits were another prime candidate for drying. Grapes became raisins, figs shriveled into sweet, chewy morsels, and apricots transformed into intensely flavored, leathery snacks. These dried fruits provided essential vitamins and sugars, especially during winter months when fresh produce was scarce. You carefully lay out bunches of grapes, watching them slowly darken and wrinkle under the sun, their sweetness concentrating with every passing day. It's a natural candy, a gift from the sun. Even some meats and cheeses were stored in underground environments. Cured meats, like hams and sausages, would be hung in cool, damp cellars where the stable temperature and humidity allowed for slow, controlled aging, developing complex flavors while preventing spoilage. Certain types of cheeses also benefited from cave aging, where the unique microbial environment of the cave contributed to their distinct characteristics. Imagine the rich, earthy aroma of aging cheese, mingling with the damp scent of the cellar walls. Vegetables, too, were dried, though perhaps less commonly than fruits or meats due to their higher water content and lower caloric density. Peas, beans, and certain leafy greens could be dried, then rehydrated later for stews and pottages. Imagine the meticulous work of shelling peas and then spreading them out to dry, hoping they don't mold before they're fully preserved. The construction of these underground storage facilities varied immensely across cultures and climates. In drier regions, simple pits might suffice. In more humid areas, elaborate ventilation systems, drainage channels, and carefully constructed linings were necessary to prevent excessive dampness, which could lead to mold. Some ancient civilizations, like the Egyptians and Romans, built sophisticated underground granaries and storage vaults. You marvel at the precision of the stonework, the ingenuity of the ventilation shafts, all designed to protect the precious food. The effectiveness of drying depended heavily on the climate. arid regions like ancient Egypt or the American Southwest were ideal, with their abundant sunshine and low humidity. In more temperate or humid climates, drying was more challenging and often required additional methods, like light smoking or pre-salting, to prevent spoilage during the drying process. This geographical dependency meant that drying techniques varied significantly across different cultures. One common historical fact that often surprises people is that ancient Roman villas often had elaborate celli or horia storage rooms, granaries that were partly or entirely underground, specifically designed for storing wine, oil, and grains. These weren't just simple holes in the ground, but engineered structures, sometimes with raised floors for ventilation, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of environmental control for preservation. It's like their version of a climate-controlled warehouse, centuries before climate control was even a concept. One common historical fact that often surprises people is that ancient Egyptians, despite their hot climate, extensively dried fish and meat, not just for daily consumption, but also as provisions for tombs. They understood that removing moisture was key to preserving organic matter, a concept they applied not only to food, but also to their elaborate mummification processes. So, the same principle that preserved a pharaoh's body also preserved his last meal. Now, for a truly obscure detail, did you know about ice houses in ancient Persia? While not strictly underground storage in the sense of a cellar, ancient Persians developed sophisticated structures called yakchals, which translates to ice pit, to store ice harvested in winter or brought from mountains. These domed mud brick structures were designed to keep the interior cool, even in scorching desert summers, allowing them to preserve food and make chilled drinks long after winter. Imagine a massive beehive-shaped building in the middle of the desert, holding vast quantities of ice, a testament to incredible engineering and the desire for cold preservation. It's like a giant, ancient igloo in the desert, which is just wild. Now, for a truly obscure detail, did you know about pemmican? This was a highly concentrated, calorie-dense food developed by indigenous peoples of North America, particularly for use during long journeys or harsh winters. It consisted of dried, pounded meat, often bison or deer mixed with rendered animal fat tallow, and sometimes dried berries. The fat acted as a binder and an additional preservative, making pemmican incredibly long-lasting and nutritious. Imagine a dense, almost brick-like substance packed with energy, a testament to ingenious survival. The health benefits of underground storage were immense. By keeping food cool and protected from pests, it significantly reduced spoilage and the incidence of foodborne illnesses. It also helped preserve nutrients that might be lost through other methods like extensive drying or cooking. For ancient populations, it meant a more reliable and healthier food supply, especially through the long, lean months of winter. The tools for drying were incredibly simple: the sun, the wind, and human ingenuity. No complex machinery, no electricity, just observation, patience, and a deep understanding of natural processes. Racks, mats, and sometimes even simple lines were used to elevate food, ensuring maximum exposure to air and minimizing contact with the ground, which could introduce moisture and pests. The social and economic impact of effective underground storage was profound. It allowed communities to store surplus food from good harvests, providing a buffer against future famines. This stability enabled larger populations to thrive and supported the development of more complex societies. As people were no longer solely dependent on immediate consumption, it was a cornerstone of agricultural civilization. The taste and texture of dried foods were, of course, very different from their fresh counterparts. Dried meat was tough and chewy, requiring significant rehydration and cooking. Dried fruits were intensely sweet and concentrated. These were not always culinary delights, but they were lifesavers, providing essential sustenance when fresh food was unavailable. You bite into a piece of dried apricot, its sweetness a concentrated burst of flavor, a reminder of summer's bounty. The labor involved in creating and maintaining these storage facilities was significant. Digging pits, lining them, and carefully monitoring the stored food required communal effort and specialized knowledge. But the investment was well worth it, providing security and sustenance for the entire community. You feel the ache in your muscles from digging, but the thought of full bellies in winter keeps you going. The importance of drying cannot be overstated for ancient armies and travelers. Dried provisions were lightweight, compact, and long-lasting, making them ideal for military campaigns or long-distance trade. An army marched on its stomach, and dried food ensured that stomach could be filled, even far from home. Imagine Roman legions carrying bags of dried grain and jerky, their sustenance for conquest. The taste of food from underground storage would often be earthy and robust. Root vegetables would retain their natural sweetness and crispness better than dried or heavily cooked versions. Grains would taste fresh, free from the rancidity that could affect improperly stored cereals. It was a taste of natural preservation, a direct connection to the soil. The process of drying also required a significant investment of labor. Slicing, spreading, turning, guarding. It was a constant, demanding chore. But the payoff was immense, the ability to store food for months, even years, bridging the gap between harvests and surviving periods of scarcity. It was a communal effort, often involving entire families or villages working together. The concept of root cellars persisted well into modern times, especially in rural areas before the widespread adoption of electric refrigeration. Many older homes still have them, a direct link to these ancient preservation techniques. It's a reminder that some of the most effective solutions are often the simplest and most natural. One academic debate still open to historians is the exact nutritional impact of ancient drying methods. While drying preserved calories and some macronutrients, the exposure to sun and air could degrade certain vitamins, particularly vitamin C. Scholars debate how much this degradation contributed to nutritional deficiencies in ancient populations, especially during long winters when fresh produce was unavailable. It's a complex interplay of preservation, diet, and health that is difficult to fully reconstruct. One academic debate still open to historians is the extent to which specific types of underground storage contributed to the unique flavors of certain ancient foods. For example, some scholars argue that the specific microbial environment of certain caves or pits influenced the development of distinct flavors in aged cheeses or cured meats, making them unique to their region. Others contend that while temperature and humidity were crucial, the microbial contribution was less significant than other factors. It's a fascinating discussion about the subtle interplay between environment and taste. The understanding of drying was passed down through generations, a vital piece of cultural knowledge. It was learned by doing, by observing, and by adapting to local conditions. Every community had its own specific techniques, refined over centuries to suit their particular climate and available resources. The security of underground storage was also a major advantage. Food stored below ground was less vulnerable to theft by raiders or enemy armies, providing a hidden reserve in times of conflict. It was a strategic asset, a silent guardian of a community's most vital resource. Even today, in many parts of the world, traditional drying methods are still used, a testament to their effectiveness and simplicity. The principles remain the same: harness the power of nature to remove moisture and extend the life of food. Even the simple act of burying food in the ground, in certain conditions, could provide temporary preservation. Some indigenous cultures would bury meat or fish in cold soil or sand, using the earth's natural coolness to extend its freshness for a few days. It was a rudimentary but effective short-term solution. So, as you feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, or a gentle breeze rustle past, remember that these same natural forces were once the guardians of ancient survival. Drying food was a brutal, demanding process, but it was also a profound act of ingenuity, a fundamental step in humanity's long journey from mere hunter-gatherers to settled civilizations. It was the first essential step in outsmarting decay, ensuring that the bounty of one season could sustain life through the next. The ingenuity of ancient peoples in adapting to their environment is truly remarkable. They didn't have advanced scientific knowledge, but through observation, trial, and error, they developed sophisticated systems that allowed them to overcome the challenges of food spoilage and ensure their survival. Underground storage is a powerful testament to this enduring human resourcefulness. You've witnessed the ancient art of drying, a testament to humanity's ingenuity in harnessing the sun and wind to defy decay. Now, as you step away from the sun-baked racks of jerky and shriveled fruits, a different, equally vital, and perhaps even more transformative element comes into play: salt. In the ancient world, salt was more than just a seasoning. It was white gold, a precious mineral that held the power to turn perishable bounty into long-lasting sustenance, literally shaping economies, trade routes, and the very survival of civilizations. So, as you imagine the cool, dark embrace of an ancient cellar, remember that this simple act of burying food was a profound step in human history. Underground storage was a brutal, demanding process in its construction and maintenance. But it was also a profound act of foresight, turning the earth itself into a silent, stable guardian of precious sustenance, ensuring that the bounty of one season could endure through the lean times, hidden away from the ravages of decay and the harsh realities of the world above. Imagine, if you will, the sheer effort involved in obtaining this crystalline treasure. For many ancient peoples, salt wasn't simply dug from the earth. It was painstakingly harvested from salt pans along coastlines, where seawater was left to evaporate under the sun, leaving behind gleaming white crystals. Or it was mined from deep underground deposits, a dangerous and arduous task. You watch as laborers, their bodies caked in salt dust, hack away at rock faces, each swing of the pickaxe bringing forth another precious chunk. This isn't just a commodity, it's a lifeline. You've emerged from the cool, earthy embrace of underground storage, understanding how the earth itself became a silent guardian of ancient harvests. Now, prepare to witness a different kind of protective shield, one that is both rich and often surprisingly effective, the use of fat and oil to seal against spoilage. In the ancient world, where air and moisture were the relentless enemies of fresh food, humanity learned to create an impermeable barrier, encasing their precious provisions in rendered animal fats or pressed vegetable oils, a truly ingenious, if sometimes messy, method of preservation. The principle behind salting is similar to drying. Yet distinct salt draws out moisture from food through osmosis, creating an environment too hostile for most bacteria and molds to thrive. It essentially dehydrates the microbes themselves, preventing them from spoiling the food. This understanding, though not scientific in the modern sense, was a profound practical discovery that revolutionized food storage. Imagine someone accidentally dropping a piece of meat into a brine pool and noticing it didn't rot. That moment changed everything. Imagine, for a moment, the glistening surface of a large earthenware pot. Inside, submerged in a thick, opaque layer of rendered animal fat, are pieces of cooked meat, perhaps some sausages or even small birds. The air above the fat is still, the silence broken only by the faint crackle of a nearby hearth. You are witnessing a method of preservation that relies on creating an airtight seal, depriving spoilage-causing microorganisms of the oxygen they need to thrive. It's like a natural ancient form of vacuum packing, but with a delicious, fatty twist. You can almost feel the richness of the fat, its solid texture a testament to its protective power. Let's consider meat first. After an animal was butchered, the fresh meat was immediately packed in layers of coarse salt. This process, known as dry salting, was common for cuts of beef, pork, and lamb. The salt would draw out the blood and moisture, forming a brine that would then be drained off. The meat would then be resalted, sometimes multiple times, until it was thoroughly cured. Imagine the sheer volume of salt required, each layer meticulously applied, ensuring every surface of the meat was covered. The resulting product was incredibly tough and intensely salty, but it could last for months, even years. The fundamental principle behind this method is the creation of an anaerobic environment. Once cooked food, particularly meat, is completely submerged in melted fat or oil, and then allowed to cool and solidify. It forms a protective layer that effectively seals out air and moisture. Without oxygen, most spoilage bacteria and molds cannot grow. Additionally, the fat itself acts as a barrier against external contaminants. This method was particularly effective for cooked foods, as the cooking process itself would kill off many existing microorganisms. For larger pieces of meat or for a quicker cure, brining was often used. This involved submerging the meat in a concentrated salt solution. The brine would penetrate the meat more quickly, allowing for a faster curing process. This was particularly common for fish, where whole fish or fillets would be packed into barrels of brine. You can almost smell the pungent, briny aroma emanating from the large wooden vats, a testament to the transformative power of salt. Let's focus on meat, as it was the primary beneficiary of this technique. After an animal was slaughtered and butchered, the meat would often be cooked first, roasted, boiled, or fried. This cooking served several purposes. It made the meat more palatable, killed existing bacteria, and prepared it for preservation. Once cooked, the meat would be packed tightly into ceramic pots or wooden barrels, and then hot. Rendered fat, often lard from pigs or tallow from cattle, would be poured over it, ensuring every piece was completely submerged. As the fat cooled, it would solidify, creating an impenetrable seal. You watch as a cook carefully ladles hot lard over cooked pork, the fat slowly enveloping each piece, a silent promise of future meals. The importance of salt in ancient societies cannot be overstated. It was so valuable that it was often used as currency, giving rise to the word salary from the Latin salarium, meaning salt money paid to Roman soldiers. Control over salt mines or salt production areas gave immense power and wealth to rulers and empires. Wars were fought over access to salt. It truly was white gold. The result was a product that could last for months, even in relatively warm conditions. This was particularly valuable for preserving seasonal gluts of meat, ensuring that the bounty of a successful hunt or a large slaughter could be enjoyed long after the event. Imagine slicing into a piece of meat that has been preserved in fat for weeks, its flavor rich and savory, a testament to this ancient ingenuity. Vegetables, too, could be preserved with salt, though less commonly than meat or fish. Cabbage could be fermented with salt to make sauerkraut-like dishes, and certain root vegetables could be stored in layers of salt. Olives were famously cured in brine, transforming their bitter taste into a savory delight. Imagine the crisp, briny snap of an ancient olive, its flavor a testament to the power of salt. Beyond meat, some cooked fish could also be preserved in oil, particularly in Mediterranean regions where olive oil was abundant. Cooked fish, flaked or whole, would be packed into jars and covered with olive oil, creating a similar oxygen barrier. This was a more luxurious form of preservation, as olive oil was often a valuable commodity. You see jars of glistening fish suspended in golden oil, a culinary treasure. One common historical fact that often surprises people is that Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt, or given an allowance to buy it, which is where the word salary originates. This highlights just how valuable and essential salt was in the ancient world, not just for food preservation, but for its perceived health benefits and as a fundamental commodity. It wasn't just a bonus, it was literally your pay. The type of fat or oil used was crucial. Lard and tallow were common in northern climates where animal husbandry was prevalent. In the Mediterranean, olive oil was the fat of choice. Other oils, like sesame or nut oils, might have been used in different regions depending on availability. The quality of the fat or oil also mattered, as a rancid fat would impart an unpleasant taste to the food. Now, for a truly obscure detail, did you know about the salt roads? These were ancient trade routes, some dating back thousands of years, specifically established for the transportation of salt from production sites, mines, or coastal evaporation ponds to inland communities. These routes were often heavily guarded and taxed, demonstrating the strategic importance of salt. Imagine a caravan of camels laden not with gold or silk, but with sacks of gleaming white salt, traversing a dusty desert, each grain a testament to its value. One common historical fact that often surprises people is that the Romans were particularly adept at preserving various foods in olive oil. Beyond fish, they would preserve cooked vegetables, cheeses, and even some fruits in oil. This was especially common for foods that were delicate or prone to drying out, as the oil kept them moist while protecting them from air. It's like their ancient version of confit, a slow-cooked and oil-preserved delicacy. The taste of heavily salted food was, of course, intensely salty. Ancient cooks often had to soak salted meat or fish for long periods, sometimes changing the water multiple times to reduce the saltiness before cooking. Even then, the resulting dish would be far saltier than what most modern palates are accustomed to. This also meant that fresh water was essential for preparing and consuming salted foods, adding another layer of logistical challenge. Now, for a truly obscure detail, did you know about potted meat? While it sounds like a modern canned product, potted meat was a traditional British preservation method that dates back to ancient times, involving cooking meat, often game or ham, pounding it into a paste with butter or other fats, and then pressing it into small pots and sealing the top with a layer of clarified butter or lard. This created a rich, spreadable, and long-lasting meat product. Imagine a dense, savory paste, sealed under a layer of golden fat, ready to be spread on bread. It's the ancient world's version of a gourmet pâté. A delicious way to make meat last. The health implications of such a high-sodium diet are a subject of modern medical debate. But for ancient peoples, the benefits of preservation far outweighed the risks. The alternative was starvation. So, while they might have suffered from conditions related to high salt intake, it was a necessary trade-off for survival. The containers used for this method were typically earthenware pots, ceramic jars, or sometimes wooden barrels. These needed to be sturdy, non-porous, and capable of being sealed effectively. Lids would often be covered with wax, pitch, or clay to ensure an airtight seal once the fat had solidified. You watch as a potter carefully fires a new batch of ceramic jars, knowing their vital role in preserving food. The process of salting was often combined with other methods. For example, meat might be salted first, then smoked or dried, providing a multi-layered defense against spoilage. This synergistic approach maximized the shelf life and ensured a more reliable food supply. You see a piece of salted pork, now hanging in a smokehouse, absorbing the rich aroma of the wood fire. The taste of food preserved in fat or oil could be incredibly rich and flavorful. The fat itself would absorb some of the food's essence, and the food, in turn, would take on some of the fat's characteristics. It often resulted in a very tender and succulent product, a far cry from the tough, dry textures of purely dried or heavily salted foods. You savor a piece of cooked duck, its tenderness enhanced by the fat it was preserved in, a truly luxurious taste. The storage of salted foods also required careful attention. They needed to be kept in cool, dry places, away from moisture and pests. Barrels and earthenware pots were common containers, providing a protective barrier. Imagine the rows of barrels in a cool, dark cellar, each one a precious repository of preserved food. The health benefits, though not understood scientifically, were practical. By preventing spoilage, this method reduced the risk of foodborne illness. It also provided a valuable source of calories and fat, essential for ancient diets, especially during periods of high physical exertion or scarcity. It was a way to pack energy into a stable, long-lasting form. The use of salt in ancient Egypt was particularly sophisticated. They used it not only for food preservation, but also in their mummification process. Understanding its dehydrating properties, this dual application highlights their advanced knowledge of preservation techniques. Even without a scientific understanding of microbiology, the social and economic impact of this preservation method was significant. It allowed for the storage and transport of high-value protein, supporting trade and military campaigns. It also provided a way for households to manage their resources, ensuring a continuous supply of meat even when fresh kills were unavailable. It was a key component of ancient food security. The cultural significance of salt extended beyond food. It was used in religious rituals as a symbol of purity and covenant, and in various medicinal applications. Its value permeated every aspect of ancient life, making it a truly foundational element of civilization. The labor involved was considerable. Cooking the meat, rendering the fat, carefully packing the pots, and sealing them all required time and effort. But the payoff was immense, a reliable source of protein that could sustain families and communities through lean times. You feel the warmth of the rendered fat. The satisfaction of knowing your efforts will provide sustenance for months to come. One academic debate still open to historians is the extent to which salt was a cause of chronic health problems in ancient populations, such as hypertension or kidney disease, given their high intake. While direct evidence is scarce, some scholars argue that the widespread use of heavily salted foods would have put significant strain on the body, potentially contributing to shorter lifespans or specific ailments. Others contend that the active lifestyles and different genetic makeups of ancient peoples might have mitigated some of these effects. It's a complex area, requiring careful interpretation of limited archaeological and textual evidence. One academic debate still open to historians is the extent to which this method contributed to the overall dietary fat intake in ancient populations and its potential long-term health effects. While fats were essential for energy, a diet heavily reliant on animal fats could have had implications for cardiovascular health, though this is difficult to assess definitively given the different lifestyles and shorter lifespans of ancient peoples. It's a fascinating area of study, trying to apply modern nutritional understanding to ancient practices. The trade in salt was a major economic driver. Salt mines and production centers became important economic hubs, and the routes used to transport salt were critical arteries of commerce. Merchants who controlled the salt trade amassed significant wealth and power. It was a global commodity, long before the concept of globalization. The use of fat and oil for preservation was particularly valuable in regions where other methods, like extensive drying due to humidity or salting, due to salt scarcity, were less feasible. It offered a flexible and effective alternative, demonstrating the adaptability of ancient food preservation techniques to diverse environments. Even in times of scarcity, salt was a priority. People would often go to great lengths, even risking their lives, to obtain salt, knowing that without it, their food supply was vulnerable. It was a constant, fundamental need, a silent partner in the struggle for survival. Even today, variations of this method persist in traditional cuisines, like confit in French cooking or various forms of potted meats. These modern iterations are a direct link to the ancient ingenuity that discovered the power of fat as a protective barrier. So, as you sprinkle a pinch of salt on your modern meal, remember the immense journey and significance of this humble mineral in the ancient world. It was a brutal, demanding process to obtain and use, but it was also a profound act of ingenuity, a fundamental step in humanity's ability to control its food supply. Salt truly was the white gold of preservation, a silent guardian against decay, ensuring that the bounty of one season could sustain life through the next. So, as you imagine the rich, protective layer of fat sealing a pot of ancient provisions, remember the ingenuity that turned a simple byproduct into a powerful tool of preservation. Encasing food in fat and oil was a brutal, demanding process in its preparation, but it was also a profound act of foresight, turning perishable bounty into enduring sustenance, enriching both the palate and the possibility of survival through the silent, protective embrace of lipids. You've explored the transformative power of salt, that white gold that defied decay and shaped ancient economies. Now, as you move from the briny air of the salt house, a different kind of aroma begins to fill your senses. The rich, pungent scent of wood smoke. You are entering the realm of smoking, an ancient art that not only preserved food but also infused it with complex, irresistible flavors, turning necessity into a culinary delight. This method, a dance between fire, wood, and patience, was another crucial weapon in humanity's unending battle against spoilage. You've explored the rich, protective embrace of fats and oils, understanding how lipids became a silent guardian against decay. Now, prepare to discover a sweeter, more luxurious side of ancient preservation, one that harnesses the power of nature's own confections, honey, and, to a lesser extent, sugar. In a world where spoilage was a constant threat, these precious sweeteners were not just for indulgence, they were powerful agents of preservation, transforming delicate foods into long-lasting, delectable treasures. Imagine standing in a small, enclosed space, perhaps a specially built smokehouse or a corner of a large hearth, where a low burning fire smolders. Above it, hanging from rafters, are strips of meat, whole fish, or perhaps even cheeses. The smoke, thick and fragrant, curls around them, slowly permeating every fiber. This isn't just about cooking, it's about transformation, a deliberate process that changes the very nature of the food. You can almost feel the smoke clinging to your clothes, a subtle reminder of this ancient craft. Imagine, as for a moment, the golden, viscous flow of honey dripping from a honeycomb. Its aroma is sweet, floral, and utterly intoxicating. You are witnessing a substance that, for millennia, has been revered not just for its taste, but for its almost magical properties. Before the advent of modern preservatives, honey was one of the most effective natural ways to keep food from spoiling. You can almost feel its sticky sweetness on your fingers, a promise of both flavor and longevity. The principle of smoking is multifaceted. Firstly, the smoke itself contains compounds that are antimicrobial and antioxidant, directly inhibiting the growth of bacteria and molds. Think of it as nature's disinfectant, delivered in a cloud. Secondly, the heat from the fire, even if low, helps to dry the food, further reducing its moisture content, much like the sun and wind you observed in the drying process. This combination of chemical preservation and dehydration makes smoking an incredibly effective method for extending shelf life. The fundamental principle behind honey's preservative power lies in its incredibly low water activity. Honey is a supersaturated solution of sugars, meaning it contains very little free water. Most bacteria, yeasts, and molds need a certain amount of water to grow and thrive. When food is submerged in honey, the honey draws moisture out of the food through osmosis, effectively dehydrating any microorganisms present and inhibiting their growth. It's like a natural, sweet desiccant, creating an environment too dry for spoilage to occur. Let's consider meat. After an animal was butchered, cuts of beef, pork, or game would be prepared for smoking. Sometimes the meat would be pre-salted or brined, adding another layer of preservation and enhancing flavor. Then these pieces would be hung in the smokehouse, often for days or even weeks, depending on the desired level of preservation and flavor. The type of wood used was crucial. Hardwoods like oak, hickory, or fruit woods imparted distinct flavors, turning a simple piece of meat into a culinary masterpiece. You watch as a master smoker carefully tends the fire, adding just the right amount of wood to produce a steady, cool smoke, ensuring the meat cures slowly and evenly. Let's consider fruits first, as they were prime candidates for preservation in honey. Delicate berries, sliced apples, pears, or figs could be gently cooked or simply packed into jars and covered completely with honey. The honey would not only preserve the fruit, but also infuse it with its own complex flavors. Imagine biting into a fig that has been preserved in honey for months. Its sweetness intensified, its texture soft and yielding, a taste of ancient luxury. The result is food that is not only preserved, but also imbued with deep, complex flavors. Smoked hams, sausages, and bacon became staples, providing rich, savory protein that could last for months. Imagine slicing into a perfectly smoked ham, its rich aroma filling the air, its flavor a testament to the slow, patient process of smoking. It's a far cry from the blandness of plain dried meat, beyond fruits. Honey was also used to preserve some nuts and even cooked meats, though this was less common due to the expense. Small pieces of cooked game or poultry could be submerged in honey, creating a rich, sweet, savory preserve. This was often reserved for the wealthiest households, a truly extravagant form of food storage. You might see a small, precious jar filled with pieces of cooked pheasant, suspended in golden honey, a testament to immense wealth. Fish, especially, benefited from smoking. Salmon, trout, herring, and eels were commonly smoked, particularly in regions with abundant waterways or coastlines. The fish would be cleaned, sometimes brined, and then hung in the smokehouse. Cold smoking, where the smoke is cool and the process is slow, was often used for delicate fish, imparting flavor without cooking it through. Hot smoking, involving higher temperatures, cooked and preserved the fish simultaneously. You could almost taste the flaky, smoky salmon, a delicacy that could travel far from its source. The source of honey was primarily wild bees, or increasingly domesticated beekeeping. Beekeeping was an ancient and highly valued skill, providing not only honey but also beeswax used for candles, sealing, and other purposes. The collection of wild honey was dangerous but rewarding, often involving raiding bee nests in trees or rock crevices. You hear the buzzing of bees, a constant, gentle hum that signifies a source of precious sweetness. Smoking was also used for other foods. Cheeses, particularly harder varieties, could be smoked to add flavor and extend their shelf life. Even some vegetables and grains might be lightly smoked, though this was less common. Imagine a smoked cheese, its sharp tang mellowed and deepened by the smoky notes. A truly unique ancient flavor. Sugar, in the ancient world, was a far rarer and more expensive commodity than honey. Sugarcane originated in Southeast Asia and was slowly introduced to the Middle East and then to Europe. It was primarily used as a medicine or a spice by the very wealthy, not as a common sweetener or bulk preservative. Its use for preservation was limited to small, highly prized items, like candied fruits or elaborate confections for noble tables. Imagine a tiny, perfectly formed candied violet, its sweetness almost overwhelming, a testament to the extreme cost of sugar. The control of fire and smoke was an art form. Too much heat, and the food would cook too quickly or burn. Too little smoke, and the preservation wouldn't be effective. The type of wood, the duration of smoking, and the ventilation of the smokehouse all played a critical role. This wasn't just a chore, it was a craft, passed down through generations, often with closely guarded family secrets. You see the subtle adjustments made to the fire? The knowing glance at the smoke rising? A silent language between artisan and element. The difference in availability and cost meant that honey was the primary sweet preservative for the vast majority of ancient peoples, while sugar remained an exotic luxury for the elite. This distinction shaped the culinary landscape, with honey-based preserves being far more common and accessible. One common historical fact that often surprises people is that many ancient cultures, from Native Americans to Norse Vikings, developed highly sophisticated smoking techniques independently. This suggests that the observation of smoke's preserving qualities was a universal human discovery, adapted to local resources and climates. It wasn't a single invention, but a widespread, parallel evolution of knowledge. One common historical fact that often surprises people is that honey was used as an antiseptic and wound dressing in ancient medicine, long before the advent of modern antibiotics. Its low water activity and natural antimicrobial properties made it effective in preventing infection and promoting healing, highlighting its versatile importance beyond just food. It wasn't just good for your stomach, it was good for your skin too. Now, for a truly obscure detail did you know about bog butter? While not strictly smoking, it's a fascinating preservation method that sometimes involved a smoky element. Ancient Irish and Scottish peoples would bury butter and sometimes meat in peat bogs. The low temperature, anaerobic conditions, and often acidic, smoky compounds from the peat acted as a preservative. When unearthed centuries later, some of this butter was still edible, though it developed a strong, pungent flavor. Imagine digging up a lump of ancient butter from a bog. Its aroma a ghostly echo of a long-lost meal. It's the ultimate slow-aged delicacy. Perhaps a bit too slow for modern tastes. Now, for a truly obscure detail, did you know about melamela? This was an ancient Greek and Roman preserve made from quinces, a fruit similar to a pear cooked with honey. The quinces, naturally high in pectin, would set into a firm, jelly-like preserve when cooked with honey, creating a long-lasting and delicious sweet treat. Imagine a golden, translucent jelly, intensely fragrant and sweet. A delightful ancient confection. It's like a medieval fruit leather, but much more elegant. The health implications of consuming smoked foods in ancient times are a complex topic. While smoking certainly helped prevent spoilage and foodborne illness, the smoke itself contained compounds that modern science identifies as potential carcinogens. However, for ancient peoples, the immediate benefit of having food that wouldn't rot far outweighed any long-term, unknown risks. The alternative was often starvation or acute illness from spoiled food. The containers used for honey-preserved foods were typically earthenware jars or ceramic pots, sealed with wax, pitch, or clay to prevent moisture absorption and keep out pests. The dark, cool conditions of a pantry or cellar were ideal for storing these preserves, further extending their shelf life. You watch as a cook carefully seals a jar of honey-preserved berries, knowing they will provide a taste of summer in the depths of winter. The portability of smoked foods made them ideal for travelers, traders, and armies. Smoked meat and fish were lightweight, compact, and highly nutritious, providing essential sustenance on long journeys where fresh food was unavailable. Imagine a Roman legionary carrying a piece of smoked sausage, his energy for conquest packed into a durable and flavorful form. The taste of food preserved in honey was distinctively sweet, but also complex, taking on the floral or earthy notes of the honey itself. The texture of fruits would soften, becoming almost jam-like. These preserves were highly valued, providing a burst of sweetness and essential calories, especially during periods when fresh produce was scarce. You savor the rich, multi-layered sweetness of a honey-preserved apricot, its flavor a concentrated essence of sunshine. The social and economic impact of smoking was significant. Communities with access to abundant wood and a surplus of meat or fish could produce valuable smoked goods for trade. This created specialized industries and trade networks, further connecting ancient societies. Smoked salmon from northern rivers could travel far inland, a testament to the effectiveness of the preservation method. The health benefits, though not understood scientifically, were practical. By preventing spoilage, honey reduced the risk of foodborne illness. It also provided a valuable source of energy and some micronutrients. For ancient diets, which could often be monotonous, honey-preserved foods offered a welcome and nutritious addition. The taste of smoked foods would have been a welcome change from the blandness of plain dried or salted provisions. The rich, savory, and often sweet notes imparted by the smoke added a depth of flavor that elevated meals. It was a culinary technique that transformed mere sustenance into something truly enjoyable. You savor the deep, earthy flavor of a piece of smoked game, its richness a comforting presence on your tongue. The social and economic impact of honey as a preservative was significant. It allowed for the storage and transport of delicate foods that might otherwise spoil quickly. This supported trade and provided a valuable commodity for exchange. Beekeepers and honey gatherers played an important role in the ancient economy. The development of permanent smokehouses, rather than just temporary smoking pits, marked a significant advancement. These structures allowed for more controlled smoking, better protection from pests, and more efficient use of fuel. They became essential features of large estates, castles, and thriving communities. The labor involved in honey preservation was less intensive than some other methods, but still required careful handling. Harvesting honey, preparing the fruits, and meticulously sealing the jars all took time and effort. But the payoff was immense, a reliable source of sweet, preserved food that could sustain families and communities. You feel the stickiness on your hands, a small price to pay for such a valuable preserve. The art of smoking was often intertwined with local traditions and available resources. Different regions would use different types of wood, leading to unique flavor profiles. The specific cuts of meat or types of fish that were smoked also varied, creating a rich tapestry of regional culinary practices. One academic debate still open to historians is the extent to which ancient populations understood the specific antimicrobial properties of honey beyond simple observation. While they clearly recognized its preservative power, scholars debate whether they had any rudimentary theories about why it worked, or if it was simply a trial and error discovery that became ingrained practice. It's a fascinating look at the intersection of empirical knowledge and scientific understanding in the ancient world. One academic debate still open to historians is the extent to which ancient smoking methods contributed to the overall health of populations. While it prevented acute food poisoning, the long-term effects of consuming compounds from wood smoke are a modern concern. Scholars debate whether ancient peoples, with their different lifestyles and shorter lifespans, experienced significant health issues directly attributable to smoked foods, or if the benefits of preservation simply overshadowed these risks. It's a nuanced discussion, highlighting the trade-offs of ancient survival. The cultural significance of honey extended beyond food. It was used in religious offerings as a symbol of sweetness and abundance, and in various rituals. Its value permeated every aspect of ancient life, making it a truly foundational element of civilization. The cultural significance of smoking extended beyond mere preservation. It was often associated with communal gatherings, feasts, and celebrations. The act of smoking and sharing smoked foods fostered community bonds and served as a symbol of abundance and foresight. You hear the laughter and chatter around a fire, the shared enjoyment of a meal made possible by the ancient art of smoke. Even today, traditional honey-based preserves persist in many cultures, a testament to their effectiveness and timeless appeal. The principles remain the same: harness the natural power of honey to preserve and transform food, creating unique flavors and ensuring sustenance. Even the tools for smoking were simple fire, wood, and a place to hang the food. No complex machinery, no electricity, just observation, patience, and a deep understanding of natural processes. This simplicity belies the profound impact that smoking had on human history, enabling people to store food, travel further, and survive harsher conditions. So, as you taste the golden sweetness of honey, remember the ancient hands that first recognized its incredible power, not just to delight the palate, but to defy decay. Honey, and to a lesser extent, sugar, were brutal in their acquisition and often luxurious in their use. But they were also profound acts of foresight, turning perishable bounty into enduring sustenance, enriching both the palate and the possibility of survival through the silent, protective embrace of sweetness. So, as you inhale the faint, lingering scent of wood smoke, remember the ancient hands that tended those fires, the patience that went into each cured piece of meat, and the ingenuity that transformed a simple element into a powerful tool of preservation. Smoking was a brutal, demanding process, but it was also a profound act of culinary alchemy, turning perishable bounty into enduring sustenance, enriching both the palate and the possibility of survival. You've savored the sweet, protective embrace of honey and sugar, understanding how these precious confections defied decay. Now, prepare to journey to the opposite end of the thermal spectrum, to a world where preservation relied on the biting chill of nature, ice, and snow. In ancient climates where winter brought freezing temperatures, humanity learned to harness the raw power of cold, turning frozen landscapes into vast, natural refrigerators, a truly unique and often challenging method of food storage. You've inhaled the rich, smoky aromas of ancient preservation, understanding how fire and patience transformed food. Now, prepare to witness a different kind of magic, one that happened almost by accident, yet revolutionized ancient diets and continues to shape our food today: fermentation. This isn't about heat or salt, but about tiny, unseen allies, microorganisms that transformed raw ingredients into complex, stable, and often surprisingly delicious foods, turning spoilage into a deliberate, beneficial process. Imagine standing in a landscape blanketed by pristine white snow, the air so cold it stings your nostrils. You are witnessing a form of preservation that is as simple as it is profound. Keep it cold, and it won't spoil. For millennia, ancient peoples living in colder regions observed that food left in freezing temperatures remained fresh for extended periods. This fundamental understanding led to practices that allowed communities to survive harsh winters and even transport perishable goods across frozen terrains. You can almost feel the biting cold seeping into your boots, a constant, invigorating presence. Imagine a world where food doesn't just rot, but undergoes a mysterious transformation. A pile of grapes left too long turns into wine. Milk left out becomes tangy yogurt or firm cheese. Grains steeped in water bubble and turn into ale. These weren't controlled scientific experiments. They were observations, often accidental, that led to profound discoveries. You can almost hear the faint bubbling, the subtle hiss of gases escaping, the quiet work of countless microbes. The fundamental principle behind ice and snow preservation is the drastic slowing down of microbial activity and enzymatic reactions. At freezing temperatures, most spoilage-causing bacteria, yeasts, and molds become dormant or die, and the enzymes that break down food are largely inactivated. This effectively puts the food in a state of suspended animation, preserving its freshness for much longer than other methods. It's like nature's own deep freeze, a silent guardian against decay. The principle of fermentation is simple, yet elegant microorganisms like bacteria, yeasts, and molds consume the sugars in food and convert them into acids, alcohol, or gases. These byproducts create an environment that is hostile to spoilage-causing bacteria, effectively preserving the food. What's more, fermentation can also enhance flavor, increase nutrient availability, and even reduce toxins. It's nature's own food factory, running silently in the background. Let's consider meat and fish first, as they were prime candidates for this method. In Arctic and subarctic regions, after a successful hunt or fishing expedition, large quantities of meat from caribou, seals, whales, or other game and fish would be frozen solid. This could involve simply leaving them exposed to the elements, or burying them in snow or permafrost. The frozen ground itself acted as a natural freezer, maintaining sub-zero temperatures year-round. You watch as hunters meticulously butcher a large animal, then carefully pack portions into snow-lined pits, knowing that the intense cold will preserve their bounty for months. Let's start with the most obvious and widespread example: alcoholic beverages. As you recall from our journey through medieval drinks, ale and wine were consumed not just for pleasure, but for hydration, often being safer than water. This was thanks to fermentation. Grapes crushed and left to sit would naturally ferment into wine due to wild yeast on their skins. Grains steeped and then exposed to airborne yeast would become ale. Imagine the first time someone drank fermented grape juice and realized it was not only safe but intoxicating. That was a moment of accidental alchemy. You can almost taste the earthy, slightly sour tang of ancient ale, a vital part of daily life. For communities that experience seasonal freezing, ice harvesting became a crucial annual event. During winter, large blocks of ice would be cut from frozen lakes or rivers. These massive blocks, sometimes weighing hundreds of pounds, would then be transported and stored in specially constructed ice houses or subterranean pits, often insulated with straw, sawdust, or earth. These structures were designed to keep the ice frozen well into the warmer months, providing a source of cold for preserving food. Imagine the arduous labor of cutting and hauling these colossal blocks of ice, a testament to the sheer effort involved in ancient cold storage. Beyond drinks, fermentation transformed vegetables. Cabbage, for instance, could be finely shredded and mixed with salt, then left to ferment. The lactic acid bacteria naturally present on the cabbage would convert its sugars into lactic acid, creating sauerkraut-like dishes. This process not only preserved the cabbage for months, but also enhanced its flavor and made its nutrients more bioavailable. Imagine the pungent, sour aroma of a fermenting cabbage vat, a smell that might seem odd today but was a sign of future sustenance. The preserved food, once thawed, would be remarkably fresh, retaining much of its original texture and flavor, unlike heavily salted or dried alternatives. This was a significant advantage, providing a welcome change from the monotonous diets of preserved foods. You might taste a piece of frozen fish, thawed and cooked, its delicate flavor a stark contrast to the tough, briny taste of salted fish. Dairy products were another prime candidate for fermentation. Milk, highly perishable, could be turned into yogurt, kefir, or, most importantly, cheese. The fermentation process in cheesemaking not only preserved the milk solids, but also developed a vast array of flavors and textures. From fresh, soft cheeses to hard, aged wheels, cheese became a staple across many ancient cultures, providing concentrated protein and fat. You see a shepherd carefully tending his flock, knowing that their milk will soon be transformed into a long-lasting, nourishing cheese. Beyond meat and fish, some fruits and vegetables that could withstand freezing, like certain root vegetables or hardy berries, might also be stored in very cold conditions or even frozen. While not as common as for protein, it offered another way to extend the availability of fresh produce. Imagine a handful of wild berries, unearthed from a snowdrift, still perfectly preserved, a tiny burst of summer in the heart of winter. Grains, beyond being brewed into ale, could also be fermented. Sourdough bread, for example, relies on a fermented starter culture of wild yeasts and lactic acid bacteria. This fermentation not only helps the bread rise, but also improves its flavor, texture, and digestibility. Imagine the tangy aroma of a freshly baked sourdough loaf, a testament to the power of microbial action. The construction of ice houses, particularly in warmer climates that still experienced cold winters, was a feat of ancient engineering. These structures, often partly underground and heavily insulated, were designed to minimize heat transfer, allowing ice to persist for many months. The Persian yakhchals, which we touched on briefly earlier, are a prime example of this sophisticated understanding of thermal dynamics. You marvel at the thick walls, the clever ventilation, all designed to trap the cold and defy the sun. The beauty of fermentation lies in its simplicity. It often required minimal equipment, just a vessel, the raw ingredients, and patience. The microorganisms were ubiquitous, present in the air, on the surfaces of plants, and even on human skin. Ancient peoples didn't understand the microbiology, but they understood the results, replicating successful fermentations through trial and error, passing down techniques through generations. One common historical fact that often surprises people is that the ancient Chinese were among the earliest and most sophisticated users of ice for food preservation. Dating back possibly to the 11th century BCE, they had large, purpose-built ice cellars, sometimes used for storing meat, fish, and even wine, long before similar practices became widespread in Europe. This highlights their advanced understanding of cold storage and its importance to their society. It's like they had a giant, ancient walk-in freezer, centuries ahead of its time. One common historical fact that often surprises people is that many ancient cultures, including the Romans and Greeks, fermented fish sauces. Garum, a highly prized Roman condiment, was made from fermented fish guts and blood, left to ferment in the sun for weeks or months. It was intensely savory, packed with umami, and used extensively in cooking. Imagine a pungent, salty, umami-rich liquid, a flavor bomb that could elevate almost any dish. It's the ancient equivalent of soy sauce or Worcestershire sauce, and it was everywhere. Now, for a truly obscure detail, did you know about ice cream in ancient Rome? While not preservation in the strict sense. Emperor Nero was said to have enjoyed a dessert made from snow brought from the mountains, flavored with honey and fruit. This required a sophisticated logistical chain to transport snow quickly before it melted, showcasing the lengths to which ancient elites would go for chilled delicacies. Imagine a Roman servant racing down a mountain with a sack of snow, desperately trying to get it to the emperor's table before it turns to water. It's a testament to the ancient desire for cold treats, even if it wasn't about long-term food storage. Now, for a truly obscure detail, did you know about kefir grains? These aren't actual grains, but symbiotic cultures of bacteria and yeast. SCOBY that resemble cauliflower florets. They were traditionally used in the Caucasus Mountains to ferment milk into kefir, a tangy, slightly effervescent drink. The origins of kefir grains are shrouded in mystery, often passed down as precious family heirlooms, highlighting the unique and almost magical nature of these living cultures. Imagine a small, gelatinous blob, passed from generation to generation, holding the secret to a nourishing and long-lasting drink. The health benefits of cold preservation were immense. By keeping food fresh, it significantly reduced the risk of foodborne illness compared to methods that relied on less understood chemical transformations. It also helped preserve a wider range of nutrients, particularly vitamins that could be degraded by heat or extensive processing. For ancient populations, it meant a healthier and more diverse diet, especially through the long, dark winters. The health benefits of fermented foods, though not understood scientifically in ancient times, were likely significant. The probiotics beneficial bacteria in fermented foods could have aided digestion, improved gut health, and even boosted immunity in populations with limited access to diverse nutrients and often poor sanitation. It was an accidental form of ancient medicine. The social and economic impact of ice and snow preservation was profound. It allowed communities in cold regions to store surplus food from seasonal hunts and harvests, providing a crucial buffer against scarcity. It also enabled trade in perishable goods over longer distances, albeit limited to colder seasons or regions with established ice storage infrastructure. It was a cornerstone of survival in challenging environments. The cultural significance of fermented foods was immense. They were often central to feasts, rituals, and daily life. The sharing of wine or ale fostered community bonds. The production of cheese or fermented vegetables was often a communal activity, bringing people together. It was a shared experience, from creation to consumption. The labor involved in ice harvesting and maintaining cold storage was considerable. Cutting, hauling, and storing massive blocks of ice was back-breaking work, often done in the harshest conditions. But the payoff was immense, a reliable source of fresh food that could sustain families and communities through the leanest months. You feel the ache in your muscles from hauling ice, but the thought of fresh meat in spring keeps you going. The portability and stability of fermented foods made them ideal for trade and travel. Wine and ale could be transported in amphorae or barrels. Hard cheeses could endure long journeys. Fermented vegetables, packed in brine, were resilient provisions. This allowed for greater mobility and facilitated long-distance commerce. The taste of food preserved by cold was often remarkably close to its fresh state, a significant advantage over other methods. This allowed for a greater appreciation of the natural flavors of ingredients. Unmasked by heavy salting, smoking, or pickling, you savor the clean, pure taste of a piece of frozen fish, a true luxury in a world of limited options. So, as you taste the sharp tang of a modern pickle, remember the ancient hands that first plunged vegetables into brine and vinegar? The ingenuity that turned sourness into salvation. Pickling was a brutal, demanding process in its preparation, but it was also a profound act of culinary alchemy, turning perishable bounty into enduring sustenance, enriching both the palate and the possibility of survival through the powerful, protective embrace of acidity. The development of specific tools for ice harvesting, like specialized saws and tongs, also marked technological advancements. These tools made the arduous process more efficient and safer, highlighting the importance placed on this form of preservation. The discovery of fermentation also enabled ancient peoples to make use of ingredients that might otherwise be unpalatable or indigestible. For example, some grains or legumes that contain anti-nutrients can be made safer and more nutritious through fermentation. It was a way to expand the ancient pantry, unlocking new food sources. One academic debate still open to historians is the extent to which ancient cold preservation methods, particularly the use of ice houses, influenced the development of early scientific understanding of thermodynamics and insulation. While they didn't have modern physics, the practical engineering required to keep ice frozen for months suggests a sophisticated empirical knowledge of heat transfer and energy conservation. Scholars debate how much of this was intuitive trial and error versus a more deliberate, albeit unarticulated, scientific approach. It's a fascinating look at the roots of engineering. One academic debate still open to historians is the extent to which accidental fermentation led to the deliberate cultivation of specific microbial cultures. While many early fermentations were spontaneous, scholars debate how quickly ancient peoples recognized and actively propagated beneficial cultures for consistent results. Moving from serendipity to intentional production, it's a fascinating look at the early stages of biotechnology. Long before the microscope, the cultural significance of cold preservation was deeply tied to the rhythms of the seasons. Winter was not just a time of hardship, but also a time of vital preparation, ensuring survival through the bounty of ice and snow. It was a testament to humanity's ability to adapt to and harness even the most extreme environments. The taste of ancient fermented foods would have been incredibly diverse, from the sharp tang of a fermented vegetable to the complex, earthy notes of aged cheese and the varied profiles of different ales and wines. Fermentation added a depth of flavor that was otherwise difficult to achieve. It was a culinary frontier, constantly being explored. You savor the rich, complex flavor of an ancient cheese, its nuances telling a story of time and microbial artistry. Even today, the principles of cold storage remain fundamental to our food systems. While we have electric freezers, the underlying concept of using low temperatures to inhibit spoilage is a direct descendant of these ancient practices. The sheer volume of fermented products consumed in ancient societies is hard to grasp today. It was a world where almost everything liquid or perishable was fermented in some way, making it a cornerstone of the diet. This pervasive use highlights its fundamental importance to survival and well-being. So, as you feel the crisp air of a winter's day, or perhaps enjoy a chilled drink, remember the ancient hands that battled the elements, cutting and hauling ice, burying food in snow, and building ingenious structures to defy the warmth. Ice and snow preservation was a brutal, demanding process, but it was also a profound act of foresight, turning perishable bounty into enduring sustenance, enriching both the palate and the possibility of survival through the silent, protective embrace of the coldest elements. The development of specific vessels for fermentation, like large earthenware jars, amphorae for wine, or wooden vats for ale and vegetables, also marked technological advancements. These vessels were designed to facilitate the fermentation process and protect the food from external contamination. You've journeyed through the icy embrace of cold preservation, witnessing how ancient peoples harnessed the chill of winter to defy decay. Now, as our extensive exploration of ancient food preservation methods draws to a close, we must confront the overarching, often brutal reality that drove all of these ingenious efforts: the constant threat of hunger, the pervasive shadow of sickness, and the incredible, enduring human ingenuity born from sheer necessity. This isn't just a story about food, it's a story about survival, about the relentless struggle against nature's indifference, and the profound impact these methods had on the very fabric of ancient life. So, as you enjoy a piece of cheese or a glass of wine today, remember the quiet, invisible revolution that happened millennia ago. Fermentation was a brutal, demanding process in its trial and error beginnings, but it was also a profound act of accidental alchemy, turning perishable bounty into enduring sustenance, enriching both the palate and the possibility of survival through the tireless work of microscopic allies. Imagine waking up each day with the knowledge that your family's survival, your community's well-being, hinged entirely on the success of your preservation efforts. A bad harvest, a failed hunt, or an unexpected period of warmth could render all your hard work useless, transforming a bountiful season into a desperate struggle for existence. The fear of starvation was not an abstract concept. It was a visceral, gnawing anxiety that shaped every decision, every act of labor. You can almost feel the weight of that responsibility. The constant pressure to ensure there would be food tomorrow, next month, next year. You've witnessed the quiet, microbial magic of fermentation, where unseen allies transformed food into stable, flavorful sustenance. Now, prepare your taste buds for a sharper, more assertive form of preservation, one that relies on the biting power of acidity pickling. In the ancient world, where the threat of spoilage was constant, the creation of sour solutions, vinegars, and brines became a crucial defense, turning perishable bounty into long-lasting, tangy provisions. This method was a testament to humanity's understanding that sometimes the best defense is a good, sour offense. The human cost of food spoilage in ancient times was immense. Without refrigeration, and with limited understanding of microbiology, foodborne illnesses were rampant. A piece of meat left too long, grain contaminated with mold, or water tainted with unseen pathogens could lead to debilitating sickness, dysentery, vomiting, and often death. Children and the elderly were particularly vulnerable. Imagine the agony of watching a loved one succumb to an illness caused by something as fundamental as their daily meal. Powerless to intervene, it was a silent, invisible enemy that claimed countless lives. Imagine the crisp, pungent aroma that fills the air as you approach a bustling, ancient market stall. It's not the earthy scent of drying grains or the rich perfume of smoke, but a sharp, vinegary tang that makes your nose tingle. Before you are rows of earthenware jars filled with various vegetables, fruits, and even some meats, submerged in cloudy liquids. This is the world of pickling, a method that relies on creating an environment so acidic that most spoilage-causing bacteria simply cannot survive. You can almost feel the tartness on your tongue, even before you taste anything. This constant threat of sickness and hunger forced ancient peoples to be incredibly resourceful. Every method we've discussed, drying, salting, smoking, fermenting, pickling, underground storage, fat rendering, and cold preservation, was developed out of an urgent, existential need. These weren't just clever tricks, they were sophisticated technologies, refined over millennia through trial and error, passed down through generations. Each technique a hard-won victory against the forces of decay. You marvel at the sheer tenacity, the relentless problem-solving that defined ancient human existence. The fundamental principle of pickling is the introduction of an acidic medium, typically vinegar or a strong brine, which lowers the pH of the food. Most harmful microorganisms thrive in neutral or slightly alkaline environments. By making the food highly acidic, you effectively shut down their ability to grow and multiply, thereby preserving the food. This understanding, though empirical rather than scientific, was a profound leap in food technology. Imagine someone accidentally dropping a vegetable into a vat of sour wine vinegar and noticing it didn't rot. That moment sparked a culinary revolution. Consider the sheer physical labor involved in these methods. Digging deep storage pits, cutting and hauling massive blocks of ice, meticulously slicing and salting countless fish, tending slow-burning smoke fires for days on end, grinding grain, pressing olives, harvesting salt from the sea. These were not easy tasks. They were backbreaking, time-consuming, and often dangerous. Yet they were performed with dedication, knowing that the very future of the community depended on their success. You feel the ache in your own muscles, a phantom echo of the ancient toil. Let's start with vegetables. The most common candidates for pickling: cucumbers, cabbages, onions, and various root vegetables were regularly pickled. For cucumbers, they would be packed into jars with herbs and spices, then covered with a brine solution, salt and water or vinegar. The salt in the brine would draw out moisture and contribute to the preservation, while the acidity of the vinegar or the lactic acid produced by fermentation in the case of brined pickles would do the primary work. You watch as a farmer's wife meticulously packs fresh cucumbers into a large ceramic pot, layering them with dill and garlic before pouring over the pungent liquid. The social structure of ancient communities was often shaped by these preservation needs. Communal efforts were common for large-scale tasks like ice harvesting, grain storage, or mass salting. Specialized roles emerged: the salt miner, the master smoker, the brewer, the cellar manager. Trade networks developed to exchange preserved goods. connecting distant communities and fostering economic interdependence. It was a complex web of human activity, all centered around the fundamental need to secure food. Cabbage, beyond being fermented into sauerkraut, was also directly pickled in vinegar. This created a different texture and flavor profile, often sharper and less fermented. Onions, small and pungent, were a popular choice and becoming delightfully crisp and tangy when pickled. Root vegetables like turnips or carrots could also be sliced and pickled, providing a crunchy, sour addition to meals, especially in winter. Imagine the satisfying crunch of a pickled turnip, its sharp flavor cutting through the richness of a stew. One common historical fact that often surprises people is the extent to which ancient armies relied on preserved foods for their campaigns. Roman legions, for example, would carry dried grains, salted meat, and pickled vegetables, allowing them to sustain themselves far from supply lines. This ability to carry long-lasting provisions was a major factor in their military success, highlighting how food preservation directly impacted the course of history. An army truly marched on its stomach, and that stomach was filled with preserved food. Fruits, surprisingly, were also pickled in ancient times, though less commonly than vegetables. Unripe fruits, or those with a naturally tart flavor, were often chosen. For example, some cultures pickled crab apples or even certain types of plums in vinegar, sometimes with added spices and a touch of honey to balance the sourness. These pickled fruits offered a unique sweet and sour element to dishes, a surprising counterpoint to savory meats. You might taste a pickled plum, its initial tartness giving way to a subtle sweetness, a truly unexpected flavor. Now, for a truly obscure detail did you know about bog bodies and their connection to preservation. While not food, the incredible preservation of human remains found in peat bogs like Tollandman or Lindoman demonstrates the powerful preservative qualities of the bog environment: low oxygen, cold temperatures, and acidic water. This natural phenomenon, observed by ancient peoples, might have even influenced some of their own preservation techniques or beliefs about the Earth's ability to keep things intact. Imagine discovering a perfectly preserved body centuries later, a chilling testament to nature's own brutal preservation methods. Even some meats and fish were preserved through pickling, often after being cooked. This method, sometimes called sousing or escabeche, involved cooking the food and then submerging it in a spiced vinegar marinade. This not only preserved the cooked food, but also infused it with flavor. Imagine cooked fish fillets, gently placed in a jar and covered with a fragrant, acidic liquid, ready to be eaten days later without further preparation. It was a convenient way to extend the shelf life of cooked protein, especially for travelers or soldiers. The health implications of ancient diets, heavily reliant on preserved foods, are a complex subject for modern historians and scientists. While preservation prevented immediate starvation and acute food poisoning, the long-term effects of high salt intake, compounds from smoke, or potential nutrient degradation from drying are still debated. Ancient peoples likely suffered from various chronic conditions that we now link to diet. But for them, survival was the primary concern, and these methods ensured that the production of vinegar itself was a crucial ancient industry. Vinegar was primarily made from fermented alcoholic beverages, wine that had gone sour, or ale that had oxidized. The acetic acid bacteria, naturally present in the air, would convert the alcohol into acetic acid. This process was often accidental at first, but ancient peoples quickly learned to encourage it, recognizing the preservative power of the resulting sour liquid. You can almost smell the sharp, acrid scent of a vinegar production area. Barrels of souring wine slowly transforming into the precious preservative. The ingenuity displayed by ancient peoples in developing these techniques is truly remarkable. They lacked modern scientific understanding of microbiology or chemistry, yet through keen observation, relentless experimentation, and the transmission of knowledge across generations, they mastered complex processes. They understood empirically that salt drew out moisture, that smoke deterred decay, that cold slowed spoilage, and that fermentation transformed. This empirical knowledge was a powerful form of science in itself. The taste of pickled foods was, by modern standards, intensely sour and tangy. Ancient palates were accustomed to these sharp flavors, which provided a welcome contrast to often bland staples. The texture of pickled foods also changed. becoming firmer and crisper in some cases, or softer and more yielding in others. These were not just preserved foods, they were distinct culinary items, appreciated for their unique characteristics. The shadow of hunger was a constant motivator for innovation. When a new method was discovered or an existing one improved, it was a cause for celebration, a small victory against the ever-present threat of famine. This continuous drive for better preservation methods slowly but surely increased food security, allowing populations to grow, cities to flourish, and civilizations to advance. One common historical fact that often surprises people is that the Romans were avid pickle eaters, particularly fond of pickled vegetables like cucumbers and onions. They even had specific terms for different types of pickled foods. Pickles were a staple for their legions, providing essential nutrients and preventing scurvy on long campaigns. Highlighting their practical importance beyond just taste, it's like the ancient world's MRE meal, ready to eat, but much tangier. The cultural significance of food preservation was deeply embedded in ancient societies. Rituals, festivals, and traditions often revolved around the harvest and the subsequent preservation efforts. The sharing of preserved foods fostered community bonds and served as a symbol of foresight and collective survival. It was a testament to humanity's ability to plan for the future, to defy the immediate limitations of nature. Now, for a truly obscure detail did you know about oxygala? This was an ancient Greek and Roman fermented milk product, similar to yogurt, but it was often consumed with added vinegar or sour wine, making it even more acidic. While technically a fermented product, the addition of further acid blurred the lines with pickling, creating a highly tart and refreshing, yet preserving food. Imagine a super tangy, almost vinegary yogurt, perhaps with herbs, a truly bracing ancient breakfast. It's the kind of dish that would definitely wake you up. Even today, the echoes of these ancient methods resonate in our modern kitchens. We still salt our meats, smoke our fish, ferment our vegetables, and store food in cool, dark places. While we have the luxury of refrigeration and advanced food science, the fundamental principles discovered by our ancient ancestors remain the bedrock of how we handle food. The health benefits of pickled foods, though not scientifically understood, were likely significant. The acidity helped prevent the growth of harmful bacteria, reducing the incidence of foodborne illnesses. In the case of naturally fermented pickles like some brined vegetables, they also provided beneficial probiotics, aiding digestion and gut health. It was an accidental form of ancient gut therapy. One academic debate still open to historians is the precise impact of specific preservation methods on the overall lifespan and demographic patterns of ancient populations. While it's clear that these methods prevented mass starvation, scholars debate whether the dietary composition of heavily preserved foods contributed to shorter lifespans or specific chronic illnesses compared to what might have been achieved with a constant supply of fresh, varied foods. It's a challenging area of research, requiring careful interpretation of skeletal remains and historical texts. The cultural significance of pickling was immense. Pickled foods were easily transportable and long-lasting, making them ideal for trade, military provisions, and provisioning ships for long voyages. They were a staple for armies, ensuring a supply of vegetables and preventing scurvy. They also provided dietary diversity during winter months, when fresh produce was unavailable. The brutal reality of ancient food preservation was that it was a constant, demanding struggle. It was a battle against decay, against hunger, against disease. But it was also a testament to the incredible resilience, adaptability, and ingenuity of humanity. From the simplest act of drying a berry in the sun to the complex engineering of an ice house, every method was a step towards a more secure future, a defiant stand against the forces that sought to limit human existence. The development of suitable storage vessels, such as large ceramic jars, amphorae, and wooden barrels, was crucial for pickling. These containers needed to be non-reactive to the acidic liquids and robust enough to withstand long-term storage. Imagine rows of these jars sealed with wax or clay, holding the promise of future meals. So, as you reflect on this journey through the brutal history of ancient food preservation, remember the countless hands that toiled, the minds that innovated, and the sheer will to survive that drove these efforts. It was a world where food was never taken for granted, where every preserved morsel was a victory, a testament to humanity's enduring fight against the shadow of hunger. You have traveled through the ancient methods of hardship and innovation, from sun drying and wind drying, to salting like white gold, to smoking with fire, to the magical process of fermentation. You have also discovered how pickling creates sour preservation solutions, how underground vaults are used as natural refrigerators, how fats and oils are used to seal foods, and the secrets of preserving sweets with honey and sugar. Finally, you have witnessed the use of ice and snow for the coldest preservation, and realized the human price hunger, disease, but also extraordinary ingenuity. The process of pickling was often a communal activity, especially after a bountiful harvest. Families and communities would gather to prepare and preserve large quantities of vegetables, ensuring their collective survival through the lean seasons. It was a shared effort, a tangible act of foresight and cooperation. This story has taken you through the challenges our ancestors faced every day to ensure enough food. It is not just about techniques, but also about the resilience, intelligence, and incredible adaptability of humans. Each method, however primitive, was a giant step forward, allowing civilizations to flourish and humans to survive the harshest of times. One academic debate still open to historians is the long-term impact of a high-acid diet from pickled foods on ancient dental health. While pickling prevented spoilage, the constant exposure to acidic foods could potentially erode tooth enamel. Scholars debate how significant this factor was, given other dietary and hygiene practices of the time. It's a fascinating question about the unintended consequences of essential preservation. As you drift off to sleep tonight, think of the ancient hands that labored, the minds that figured out how to fight decay, and the preciousness of each bite of food that was preserved. Be grateful for your modern refrigerator, but also take a moment to reflect on the extraordinary efforts that shaped our food history. Now, let these stories gently lull you into a deep sleep. The taste preferences for sour and acidic flavors were much more pronounced in ancient diets than in many modern ones. This was partly due to the prevalence of pickled foods, and partly due to the use of verjuice, unripe grape juice, and other sour agents in cooking. Ancient palates were simply more accustomed to sharp, tangy tastes. Even today, traditional pickling methods are used worldwide, a testament to their effectiveness and cultural longevity. The principles remain the same: harness acidity to preserve and transform food, creating unique flavors and ensuring sustenance.